Hey everyone, hopefully you're having a good day. My name's Andy. My channel's Finding Value. Today we're going to do our daily technical analysis update of commodities. We'll step through dollar, 10-year yield, 30-year yield, and go all the way through precious metals and different commodities that I follow. I'll give you my financial opinion. And again, guys, you guys should have strategies in place. You should, well, at least this is my opinion. I have strategies in place. I stick to certain allocations when things are there that are of good value. I take advantage of that value. I don't determine what's of good value. I don't determine what stocks are good at any single point in time. But if the setup is there, I take it. That's what you have to do as an investor. I don't create the setups. I don't control the ultimate destiny of where these stocks necessarily go, but I do take advantage of the situations where things get oversold, where the market conditions are turning favorable for sectors. I mean, that's basically all you can do as an investor. And then you protect yourself with portfolio allocation and position sizing. So let's take a look at what's going on. I'm going to start with the dollar here. What we saw today, we saw a lot of stuff go up today. We have a weaker dollar. Will this dollar continue to be weaker? And I don't have a clear picture here, to be honest. On the long term, we've got this white resistance line that we're playing with right there. We've broken the other resistance line here to the upside, and we're kind of moving higher. But really the question is, are we going to come back down to the lower end of this channel that's down here? And we've got this nice big wick at the top. It hasn't closed above this resistance support level. If we zoom in, because this is a monthly candlestick, if we zoom in on the dailies, we popped up here, we sold off in this bearish engulfing pattern, means we are going to head lower. Now we're heading lower, we're getting that sell-off, and this candlestick here is sitting on support. You can see the wick on the bottom, you can see the support line coming right underneath it, and we also have other support, but right before it. Will this head lower or will this bounce and head higher? We're going to have to see what the buyers and sellers do here. Usually towards the back half of commodity cycles, we see a weakening dollar, which really gets commodities going. We saw commodities doing some pretty crazy stuff today. Like, it was pretty much strong across the board. We had that weaker dollar, and that's really, I think, a tailwind for us. But which way are we going to break here? If I were to take at least a guess or a stab at this, we have support underneath us. That's what that wick is at the bottom. This support line is still valid, and we could move higher if the buyers want to push it higher. But we have to see what happens. I'm not ready to say that the DXY is just going to rocket higher. It very well could. And we're at a decision point here where we're sitting on support. And generally, you break support, you pull back, you do a retest move, and then you break higher. That's usually what happens. So if I were to make a educated guess here off of the statistics and probabilities of other chart patterns that I've seen, I would side with the DXY continuing higher in the short term. But that doesn't mean that we'll get a weak little bounce and then we roll back over. So we'll see what this thing does here in the short term. I don't think it's necessarily completely, we'll call it, the commodity bull market's not completely dependent on the DXY rising or falling, but it definitely adds a tailwind with the DXY going down behind commodities and precious metals. Looking at the 10-year yield, we're heading higher still. I still think this looks good to move on higher. We're breaking out of this resistance line here. We're starting to gap away from it. This does not look weak to me. This looks pretty strong, like it wants to go higher. Higher 10-year yield means that people are continuing to sell bonds. It means that people are shifting money away from the stock market as these yields go up, and it's highly dependent on how fast yields go up. If we go up kind of weak, the stock market can continue higher. If we go up in an uncontrolled fashion where we start jetting quite dramatically, we could see a lot of pressure on stocks. Pressures have basically deflated the stock market to some degree. but we have to see what these yields do and how fast they go up. I think right now the yields are subdued or kind of held back by the price of oil and natural gas. I think that they are manipulating those prices through the Strategic Petroleum Reserve releases, and I think it's only going to last for a little while longer before this actually speeds up again. So that's kind of my take on it right now. And by looking at how this is breaking the long-term resistance line and this resistance line, I think this could potentially move quite a bit higher. And we could see far higher yields that we haven't seen in a long time. And at one point, whenever this kind of slows down, there's going to be one heck of an opportunity there with low risk, high reward in bonds in the future. Looking at TLT, TLT is actually holding up quite strong given the pressures in the market. So we had 10-year yields go higher, 30-year yields go higher, and this is basically flat on the 20-year bond price, the price of it. So we're moving sideways there. The 30-year yield was kind of flattish, but still, when looking at this from a long-term perspective, this looks good for a move higher. So higher yields on the 30-year and the 10-year bonds. Now, I've been looking at the mix between the 30-year yield and the 10-year yield and basically the gap between them and trying to see how gold, silver, and platinum respond to differing gaps between those yields. It's basically the curve. And I do think they're somewhat correlated, but not totally correlated. So it's a loose correlation there. But when looking at it, I do think that precious metals are well priced given where the spread is between these two. So looking at the CRB index, higher yields plus a weaker dollar usually is a good tailwind behind commodities. We're seeing them firm up here. We could move sideways a little bit. Maybe we launch here. But again, I'm not in the short-term price prediction game. I'm in the positioning game. I'm in the long-term market condition and how these assets will be priced 4 or 5 years from now. I think commodities are definitely going higher. We are still in an uptrend for commodities. There's your uptrend line right here that we're talking about. And everything is behaving quite well. Yeah, we're in a pullback at this moment. We could be seeing a bottom anytime here and start moving back up, highly dependent on the price of oil. So looking at gold having that weaker dollar, we did have a little bit higher yields. Basically a flat-ish day today. Still looks strong to me to go higher. Looking at silver moving higher today. That's looking fantastic. We're going to start to see that silver to gold ratio, I think, roll over here. And platinum also a little bit stronger than gold today. We're getting above these resistance support lines, so that's looking a little bit better. We do have a little bit of a slowdown here with a little bit of the wicks at the top. We may kind of come back to this support zone before heading higher. So that's what platinum looks like. Looking at the GDX continuing to move higher. That's looking good. And so same with SILJ, that moving higher, 3.16%. We're seeing a lot of the companies also start to bounce. So I think these look very good. If you were to look at the XAU to gold ratio, that is moving higher. We still have a lot of work ahead of us, but definitely the gold and silver miners are looking much better than what they have before. Looking at crude oil also getting a little bit of a bid today, 3.3%-ish, somewhere in that range. I am still a little bit dumbfounded how they are pushing this guy lower. All I'm seeing is opportunities left and right for energy. And this is going to be a short-term push. They're going to push it down as far as they can. Maybe they can get it to $76. Maybe they can't. I don't know the exact bottom here. But I think this is a great opportunity for those that are willing to basically short government and their stupidity and their money printing and basically taking the opposite bet and going long on oil, which is a good inflation hedge. And I think eventually this will rocket higher when the SPR releases are all said and done for. Natural gas also firming up, but I'm not calling victory yet. We've got a large downward selling pressure candlesticks right before this and a weak bounce right now. So usually you get these weak bounces and they like to roll over and head somewhere lower. So I'm not totally inclined to say that natural gas is at its final bottom yet. I'm waiting for the markets to slow this momentum down, which is pretty strong. And I still think there's a little bit more downside in natural gas, maybe even in crude oil. There might be. It's strengthening. It's kind of a neutral setup here. We do have a little bit of momentum coming up, but we got to see the continued buying pressure for me to say, yeah, this is definitely a bottom yet. Looking at XOP, yeah, you know me. Again, we are kind of just flustering sideways, kind of directionless. I think the market wants to go long oil and natural gas producers. But we also understand that we've got Biden out there releasing the strategic petroleum reserves in the short term. So that's going to be a headwind. So I think people want to position in it. We're seeing strength in these companies' names, but I still think they're going to try to play with the oil price and try to drive that lower. They're going to try to manipulate the CPI number by driving the oil price lower. So short term, I think they can maybe do it. Long term, this is a great entry point at some point in these companies. But XOP looks okay, and there's just a struggle going on where it's resulting sideways. OIH is looking real strong here. And I think the energy service companies are also looking strong. I like them a lot. And if you guys want to know what companies I really like, join up to the Platinum membership. You can see the companies that I'm going long in for those. Looking at uranium futures prices are at 51.80 at least on here. We did pop higher on the futures prices. Looking at the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust, yeah, we got a little bit of a down day today, but still looks good for a potential move higher if the buyers want to push it. We got to get above 1815. It's going to take some work. 1815 is that long-term resistance line going across here whenever it shows up at 1815. Uranium looks like we've got a slightly higher day. Momentum is coming back. What we want to look for now is we're trying to see if this thing is going to, continue up on a channel. Are we going to kind of squeeze up where something kind of squeezes to some corner? That's what we're basically looking for. And right now, we don't have a clear direction exactly where we're going to go, but we want to break 87 and get above 87 and close above it and stay above it. That's kind of our short-term goal in the short term. Looking at the stocks themselves, like CCJ, I'm pretty much seeing a mixed bag across the board. We are basically flat today. Momentum is heading a little bit lower, but we do have a lot of resistance right where we're at. If you were to take a big picture view, you've got resistance coming all above us, right where this white line is, and we're coming up into that resistance area. We'll see if we can break it this shot and take a run, or if we're going to pause and maybe do a little loop here or something like that. But again, I don't know the path the path that this is necessarily going to take, but long-term wise, we're going higher. That's my take. Higher, higher, higher. TAN still looks good from a long-term perspective. Getting a little bit of selling pressure, but still looks good to go higher. It looks like there's been some selling pressure in this general vicinity up here. Every time we've got a bearish piercing, bearish engulfing. We're getting a little bit of a hammer, but we're working through it, and I think eventually it'll work its way higher. We've got good support underneath it. Looking at COPX, that is taken off. Good momentum to the upside. I still think we're going higher here. Weaker dollar. A lot of this depends on the dollars, guys. So look at the dollar, look at the 10-year yield, look at those things. When we see higher 10-year yield, weaker dollar, that's kind of the recipe that we want for these to go moonshotting. We want money to rotate out of stocks, out of bonds, and we want them to rotate in here. And with a weaker dollar, it gives us a tailwind. That's kind of the best market conditions that we can kind of dream of. CRB to S&P 500, we are pulling back. S&P is doing quite well. CRB is as well. I think eventually this will move higher at some point, and this uptrend will continue. It's a big uptrend here. Basically, we've got a paradigm shift breaking the blue trend line, new paradigm where commodities will outperform. We are outperforming, and I think eventually we'll continue on higher. CRB outperforming the S&P 500. Looking at the rare earth metals, rare earths doing quite well. We came back down to retest against this support line in the blue line. We are now heading higher. What am I doing with my shares? I'm doing absolutely nothing. I'm just going to sit in them and hold on to them and let them make me money. Looking at lithium, lithium also bouncing off that support level. Looks to me like we're going to want to head higher here. And lithium across the board is looking quite strong. The S&P 500 is also looking strong in the short term, and we're going to have to see if we can get back to this line and if we're going to break it or not. One thing is, usually it's a positive, is you kind of draw through here. It's kind of more resistance support levels. You can kind of squeeze it back and forth. But usually when this points downward like this consolidation, when it ends, it's a continuation pattern on a much longer term view. But we could move sideways longer than what we have. We could obviously move back and forth in a chopping pattern for a little bit, which is what I think we're going to do. U.S. Composite Index, very much like the S&P 500, we're heading higher. We got to get back to about 12,500 and see if we can break that and close above it. If not, we could easily turn back and reverse lower, depending on interest rates, and mainly interest rates and oil. EEM, remember, weaker dollar, EEM likes that. We're heading higher in EEM. That's looking good for emerging markets. Now we have to determine if the dollar is going to continue to weaken. XHB, still looking good. Nice, good update today. It's very much correlated with the overall markets, it seems like, but it's looking good, moving higher there. Lumber also moving higher. That's looking like it's firming up, trying to make a move higher. We've got cocoa futures looking good. I think they will continue higher. Broken down trend. Wheat is starting to firm up here and move higher. That's looking great. The fertilizer companies are also firming up. We've got soybeans higher. We'll see where that goes. And corn is also looking good to move to the upside. I think that we are going to come back up here. We'll see how high we get. We may fill this gap, and we're going to have to figure out where we go from there. And that's a good ways ahead of us. Copper looking strong. But again, we're just moving sideways in this channel here. And we got to break above this channel for a new uptrend for copper. With all those agricultural soft commodities being strong today, it's no wonder that we have a strong VanEck agribusiness ETF. That's looking good. We came back to support, used it as support, and are bouncing higher. So that looks good. Looking at aluminum, aluminum's also basically turning around here. We're getting support. Again, I like a lot of the companies in this general vicinity. So I think that we'll see some good moves there. Lots of opportunities in the market, guys. We're also seeing a really strong bounce in Baltic Dry Index, up 4% today. And a lot of the companies are also up. But that's also another one that I think there's a couple of companies that I really like in the Baltic Dry Index. So that's what I've got for today. Hopefully this helps you figure out where to look in the markets. And there's a lot of really good opportunities out there. And if you guys are interested in the opportunities and my opinions on those opportunities, definitely subscribe in the link below, the description link below. Sign up for a Platinum membership. Join our question and answer session at 7 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on Saturday, 9/10. Join me tomorrow, and you can ask me questions directly. There's a lot of value there. I can tell you what my opinions are on the charts. I can maybe look at the company, depending on how many companies I have to look at, and I'll give you my opinion. All right, guys, give me a thumb up for the content, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you next time. This is Finding Value.